The EPA moves to control emissions blamed for global warming from power plants, factories, and oil refineries. Clean Skies News talks with EPA's Assistant Administrator. Senator Joe Lieberman, who co-authored new legislation to cut carbon emissions, talks with Clean Skies News about the plan. And West Coast senators call for a moratorium on offshore drilling permanently as BP workers try a new tactic to stop the flow of oil into the Gulf.
From the Energy News Center in Washington, D.C., this is the Energy Report with Susan McGinnis.
Good afternoon, I'm Susan McGinnis. Thanks for joining us for the Energy Report. EPA will start regulating greenhouse gases at industrial facilities like power plants next year, but the agency has set cutoff limits 3 to 4 times higher than it first proposed, and it is guaranteeing smaller sources won't be regulated before 2016. EPA originally proposed emissions of more than 25,000 tons of CO2 a year, but EPA Assistant Administrator Gina McCarthy said comments the agency got convinced them that level was too low. Instead, only new facilities emitting 100,000 tons a year and modified facilities emitting 75,000 more tons will be immediately affected. Clean Skies News sat down with McCarthy ahead of today's announcement.
When we proposed it, we thought a 25,000 ton per year level was going to be about right in terms of the kind of numbers of permits that states would have to deal with. As a result of taking a look at the comments that we received, we know we didn't calculate effectively just the impact of that 25,000 level.
The rule shields small sources of emissions from permit requirements that would otherwise be required under the Clean Air Act. McCarthy told us the whole idea is to capture the largest facilities first and find a different way to deal with smaller facilities later. For the large sources, the proposal regulates new plans for construction and existing ones only when they want to make modifications that would lead to significant increases in greenhouse gases. EPA is phasing in requirements, so no facility holding a valid air permit needs to consider greenhouse emissions until the permit needs renewal or the facility is modified. EPA says an estimated 550 sources that don't now have air permits will need them starting in July of 2011. The rule does not address how much carbon emitters will have to cut, and it does not say what technologies can be used. The administration says it prefers legislation over regulation to cut carbon emissions, and the newly released Senate climate bill aims to do just that. Yesterday, John Kerry and Joe Lieberman unveiled their bill 7 months in the making. The American Power Act would establish a cap-and-trade system for carbon emissions, just like last year's House-passed climate bill does. But the Senate bill also includes elements of a cap-and-dividend plan by returning money to consumers, and as Senator Lieberman put it, accounting for the real cost of carbon emissions. After the rollout, Clean Skies' Tyler Suiters talked with Lieberman about the influence Senators Susan Collins and Maria Cantwell had on the bill.
Senator Cantwell and Senator Collins want very much to make sure that the market on which these carbon allowances and credits are traded doesn't become a place for Wall Street speculation. So we have specifically provided that only if you're directly involved in these businesses can you trade on the market. In other words, we don't let the Wall Street speculators in.
Well, Tyler also had a long conversation with John Kerry about the new climate bill. You can see the entire interview right here on our website. All 6 senators from California, Oregon, and Washington state are introducing legislation to put a permanent moratorium on all oil exploration and drilling off the West Coast. The senators argue, besides the obvious dangers to the environment any spill would create, that jobs from fishing and tourism far outpace any jobs that drilling would bring. They also say any oil found would only be able to power the country for just over a year, and that the cost and potential dangers just are not worth it. Senator Barbara Boxer told reporters oil remains a dirty business. Equipment failures, wild weather along the West Coast, earthquakes, and human error all make the prospect of accidents, she says, too dangerous.
Can you assure us that something like this explosion, could never happen again to this extent? And they said, we cannot make any such assurance. Straightforward answer. And so we know this can happen again. And from the testimony that we heard, we feel it will happen again.
The West Coast has long been a leader in low carbon alternatives. We shouldn't become part of the problem. We should become part of the solution. And done right, the transition to increase our national security and protect our environment and create millions of jobs is to get off our addiction to oil and pursue other avenues.
BP engineers continue to try to stem the flow of oil into the Gulf. Today, they inserted a 6-inch tube into the leaking 21-inch pipe surrounded by a stopper to keep oil from leaking into the sea. They hope to siphon the oil to a tanker at the surface. If that fails, a second containment box is ready to be placed over the well. You may remember that the first box failed earlier this week when slushy ice formed inside the container. This new smaller box can be injected with heated water and methanol so ice won't build up. If the riser plan fails, undersea robots will apparently position the new box over the gusher later tonight. An offshore natural gas platform sank off the coast of Venezuela early today. All 95 workers there were rescued. Officials say the Aban Pearl collapsed after a problem with its flotation systems that led to a massive water leak. Oil Minister Rafael Ramirez says workers were able to shut off safety valves to the gas field before evacuating, that there's no apparent threat to the environment. Just last week, Ramirez stood on this platform to inaugurate the project. President Hugo Chavez praised it as an important step in Venezuela's efforts to tap its huge natural gas deposits, saying we're making history. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon says Canada should make climate change policy a priority. Ban is visiting Canada ahead of next month's G20 summit in Toronto. He urged leaders to live up to greenhouse gas reduction targets negotiated under the Kyoto Protocol. Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper pulled Canada out of the Kyoto Protocol after he was elected in 2006. Canada has pledged a 17% cut in greenhouse gases by 2020. That's from 2005 levels. That is in line with U.S. targets, but not as tough as Kyoto mandates. The world could be getting a quarter of its electricity from solar power by 2050. This is coming from the IEA, announcing this at the Mediterranean Solar Plan Conference in Valencia, Spain. It said a combination of PV technology and concentrating solar power could generate 9,000 terawatt hours of energy within 4 decades. It says that could also enhance world energy security while cutting carbon dioxide emissions nearly 6 billion metric tons a year. The forecast predicts solar plants to be able to compete with coal and nuclear plants by 2030. That's the Energy Report. We'll see you again tomorrow with your latest energy news. For any suggestions or comments about our programming on Clean Skies News, you can email us at contact@cleanskies.com. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. From all of us here in the Energy News Center, have a great day.